Hey viewers, welcome to Branching Out. I'm Curtis Hanlon, and today I'd like to talk about 4 steps you can take when building a food forest for beginners. Now, I've been doing this for over 4.5 years or so I don't really consider myself a beginner anymore, although I make mistakes like a beginner. But I'm always learning, and I constantly keep learning on how to plant, what I like to plant, how it can grow easier, stuff like that. So I'm always into it. So step number 1 is, what kind of food forest do you want? So you need to decide, well, this is the winter time. This is the best time to start planning out for your spring food forest. So if you're really looking into getting a food forest, what kind of food forest are you going to grow? Is it a food forest for veggies, or is it a food forest for fruit, or maybe medicinal, or maybe a little mixture of all of the above, or all together, or all of them? So first thing you want to do is figure out what kind of food forest you'd like. Then you're going to want to figure out, where am I going to put this food forest? Where does the sunlight come from? And you're going to want to plan accordingly. So if the sunlight was where the camera is and it's facing me, I'm going to want my biggest trees that are going to grow the tallest in the back. So I'm going to want the shade to go off to the back and not to the front. That'll leave some of my understory trees and my lower root cover crops or root vegetables or anything like that that I'm growing will stagger downward and still get the amount of sun that you would want in the most way. So that's what you want to think of that. You definitely want to take the time over the winter to start planning it out, and get yourself a book. I always have a book. I'm always writing stuff down, so there's like pages of all kinds of stuff, whether it's just 1 page on peaches, or 1 page on dirt, or 1 page on regenerative soil, or whatever it is. I'm always writing it down, so I have a little bit of something to go back to. So that's definitely step 1. And once you figured that out, then we're going to move on to step 2. Okay, so the second step is, you're going to want to find out where your water's coming from. So do you have a creek? Do you have a pond? Are you collecting rainwater? Are you using the hose? Are you going to go around and hand water with a jug? That's up to you and your food forest. It really depends on how large your food forest is, how close and how convenient your water source is. I collect 24,000 liters of water off my greenhouse to use when there is a drought in the summertime, because there usually is a couple of weeks without water. So we definitely want to find out where your water is coming from. So I also pump from a runoff creek that is just before the actual creek, which goes into Lake Erie. But I usually grab that after a good rain, and I fill up my ponds. So I also use water from my ponds, and I also use the water right straight from the creek. So it just depends on the day, and if everything goes right and I have a good mulch down, I won't have to water as much, and I can let the rain just go in and saturate that ground. So that's one of the things you'll do through permaculture, is to really kind of absorb that rain, get that energy into the ground, and try to hold it as long as you can. So that was step 2, is definitely figure out where your water is going to come from, how are you going to irrigate your plants, and make sure that you do it correctly. So make sure you don't overwater, because overwatering is just as bad as underwatering, and some plants just don't require as much water. This right here is a cranberry, and it takes water as much as I can give it, pretty much. But then other things like this lemon here, it doesn't need water barely at all, maybe half a cup every week or something, especially in the winter time. So that's step number 2. So step 3 is, we're going to figure out in this winter, while we're waiting for spring to come and start our food forest, you're going to want to figure out, where are your structures going to be, and what kind of structures do you need? Are you going to have chickens? Are you going to have goats? Are you going to have cows? Are you going to have a large barn, a small barn? Are you going to have a greenhouse? Are you going to have a hoop hut, cold frame? It all depends on your needs and requirements. So for me, I have a 70-foot, 24-foot wide, 70-foot long greenhouse that I use for a lot of things. For one, working in the wintertime, because it gets kind of nasty outside and I don't want to be out there. So I get in the greenhouse and I putter around, and I have some of my starts, and I've also been able to extend my growing season. So in my greenhouse I have some gala apples that I started last winter right here, right in this spot right here. And they're doing really well. I have 8 of them, and they're about this tall right now from the ground. And yeah, they're doing really well. And they were able to get an extra couple of months of growth based on the fact that the greenhouse stays slightly warm enough to keep them alive. So yeah, you definitely want to think about where your structures are going to go, how they're going to help utilize what it is you're doing in your greenhouse. So you definitely want to figure out, do I want a greenhouse? Do I need a big greenhouse? Do I need a little greenhouse? There's a lot of things for a lot of people. It just depends. I'm working on about 2.5 acres of food forest. So I have a really large greenhouse on the top of the hill that I use, where I collect the rain off of that into about 20 different totes, which gives me, and adds up to about 24,000 liters of water. That helps water my berry hill. And there's a section down there that I use for all of my potted plants, like my maples and my chestnuts. I'll have oak growing this year. I have hickory growing this year. They'll all be down there, and I'll figure out a watering system, like a drip line, that I can use off of those rain barrels to keep them saturated enough to keep them alive down there. So it should just be a one-stop, turn it on, turn it off kind of thing. That's the idea. I'm quite a lazy gardener. That's kind of one of the reasons I like permaculture, is because you kind of let nature do most of the work. I have to do all the initial work first to get all the shrubs and the weeds and all that stuff, get that out of there so that I can put in the good stuff and create my guilds and plant my trees and stuff like that. But for the most part, using mulch and a few other techniques that you can use to help minimize the amount of work needed. Now, I actually enjoy pruning. It's one of my favorite things to do, is go around and trim out a plant or grab other cuttings to try and start new trees. But that's definitely what you want to do. Make sure you figure out where your structures are going and what structures you may need for your requirements. So that was step 3. So step 4 is one of my favorite, and it's kind of a cliche for me. I kind of like, my little motto here is always be propagating. So if you don't wait. I mean, I know you may be thinking, hey, here comes the spring and I'll start in the spring. But just because you're trying to plan out your stuff in the spring, it doesn't mean that you don't know what you want already. So you may want a certain type of apple. So get that apple, or try to propagate it. Learn how to plant the seed, or stratify the seed to plant the seed. You're going to want, say you like peaches or whatever. Again, stratification is a big thing in permaculture, because they need a certain amount of chill hours to get those seeds to become viable, to start germinating, to get the roots on them for spring, so that they can sprout through and come up. So you definitely want to grow stuff, anything you can. I have seeds. I'm going to an expo on February the 1st. There's one here in Hamilton. We're going to go check that seed exchange out, and I'm going to take some of my cranberry seeds that you should watch from one of my videos. It shows you how to collect the cranberry seeds, which is super easy. They're super easy to propagate. But yeah, you can start with anything. I have a lemon seed that I got out of one of my lemons that was at work or something like that, and I plucked it in there and it grew up. And this is the second one. The other one I have is like 4 feet tall, and it's sitting in my loft at the greenhouse, or excuse me, at the farm. So yeah, always be propagating, whether it's air layering, tip layering, mounding, just doing straight from seed, maybe straight from cutting, even bare root. If you're going to be looking for bare roots, this is the time to start looking, because a lot of people are sold out and you kind of have to buy those things ahead of time. So it's good to think ahead and get a little bit of start, because what you're going to want to do when you're starting a food forest, get your trees and your fruit bushes in immediately, especially your fruit trees. They say the best time to grow a fruit tree is yesterday or 20 years ago, and they are absolutely right. I started growing mine the first year, and it was chaos. I just went down in there, I had a small little drawing of what I wanted to do, and I started collecting trees of all different types. So I have 5 or 6 different types of apples, I got different types of peaches, nectarines, I got a few different plums, a few different cherries, and the list just goes on, and it doesn't end. My list is replenished as fast as I check them off. So definitely APB, always be propagating, ABP. I hope I said that right. Always be propagating. Get out there, grow a seed, get a little pot, get something started. Now's the time. So that was basically the 4 steps that you would take to start your food forest for a beginner. That's what I wish I kind of knew, those little steps. You can try, definitely I do permaculture, and I couldn't recite the 12 principles of permaculture, but I get the gist of it. It's being part of the land, absorbing energy and storing energy and collecting energy. And it's a lifestyle. It's just an organic lifestyle where things become a little more natural. Everything grows natural. Everything grows together. There's companion planting and whatnot. But I really do enjoy the principles of permaculture, and that's why it's my farm, or my food forest is called a permaculture food forest. Right now it looks a little bit like an orchard, but again, I have so much room for thousands of more plants, and I just can't afford 1,000 plants, so I have to do a little bit at a time and whenever I can get them. So that's definitely what I want to do. So like I said, don't wait to start growing. Definitely start now. And I hope this video helps to kind of get you going, but definitely get yourself a little book and write down all the little quotes and the little things that you need, just to kind of remember how, like, for example, my peach leaf curl I come up with every year. So I got to remember that I got to make the formula with some copper sulfate and spray right about now, and or before this whole cold snap happened, and again in the spring to help prevent that. And it's considered organic to use copper sulfate. So I try to do everything without chemical and without herbicides or pesticides. I don't use anything. If it's not a compost or a type of manure or coffee or something natural that I can reuse, like eggshells or anything like that, that's what I use. And I do the best I can with what I got, and so should you. And I know this is probably kind of a short video, so I'll leave you with that, and I hope you have a safe and wonderful week, and we're going to see you next week, and we're going to try and do something different for another video, and we'll just say take care. See you later.